Yay! Welcome to Q&A Thursday. Great to be here. We've got some really interesting stuff to talk about today, and some stuff that maybe is not light-hearted as some of the things that we do, but something that's really, really important to everybody, I think. Just to give you a bit of context, I was in Sydney, as you guys know, last week, which is why I had to pre-record last week's video. And while I was there, I went to a workshop with the Black Dog Institute, which is a really well-known organisation that deal with mental illness. And some of the stats and figures that they were giving me during that workshop were quite startling. And it was something that I wanted to share with you guys, because I think it's something that as leaders we need to be able to have that awareness of and be able to deal with when we recognise that that might be somebody on our team that's suffering that. Anyway, so we're going into that a little bit more, but first let's do some housekeeping. So who can see and hear me? If you can write it in your little comments in the bottom right hand side. I'm just checking all my stats here. Apparently we're all okay. Yeah, we should have some people on. So if you can see and hear me, just write it in the comments on your right hand side, so that I know that you are there and we can start having a chat about this, which I think is going to be really, really interesting. I think some of these stats might blow your mind. Hey, Flick, how you going? I'm glad you can see and hear me. Hey, Leanne, fantastic. Hey, Terry, great to see you. All right, fantastic. All right, so as I said, this is really, really, I think, something that is relevant to us all as leaders. I think it's something that we have to have an awareness of, not only for ourselves, but for our team as well. So as I said, when I was in this workshop with the Black Dog Institute, they had some really interesting things to share, and things that may not be in a lighter note, but things that we need to be aware of that I wanted to share with you guys. So this is the most up-to-date information that we have got currently, and I think it's important that you guys know about it. So without further ado, I'm really excited to share it with you. I'm going to share my screen with you so that you've got the slides and the stats and stuff in front of you. Feel free to take notes or ask questions at any time, and that we can have a chat about it. But bear with me while I open my PowerPoint for you. Okay. Let's try that again. My PowerPoint here. So let's start. Okay. So how do I look after the mental health or the mental well-being of my team? And that's really the million-dollar question, is how do you look after the mental well-being of your team? Now, I want to differentiate mental health and something else, because often we have people in our team that may suffer some sort of life incident, whether that be a relationship breakdown or a death in the family or something of that nature. Now, that to me is life kicking someone in the guts versus a mental well-being issue. Now, it may lead on to mental health, but at the moment they need your support, they need your help, they need time, they need, you know, all those sorts of things to get over that temporary situation until they feel like they are okay and ready to cope. What I am talking about here is the mental health illness that can reoccur, and often does, for many, many people. So we're talking anxiety, we're talking depression, we're talking post-traumatic stress disorders, all those sorts of things. So this is the kind of mental health that I'm sort of speaking about today, and the ones that the Black Dog Institute were telling us all about. So it's a bit different to if you had a team member came to you and said, look, you know, I've had a death in the family, it's really hit me, you know, I'm not focusing well on work, and then they will absolutely need your support, and they will need time, and they will need, you know, all those sorts of things for you to support them through that process. But generally when somebody starts to feel a bit better than that, it's not a reoccurring theme. Whereas mental health that we're talking about today is usually reoccurring, and that's the unfortunate part of it. Okay, so let's look at some facts and figures, which sort of blew my mind as well. So 45% of Australian adults at some time will suffer a mental health illness in their life. So we're talking depression, we're talking anxiety, we're talking post-traumatic stress disorder, we're talking of all those sorts of things. 45% of adult Australians will suffer mental illness in their lifetime. 1 in 5 in any 1 year. So we're talking, if you've got a team of 10 people, 2 of them in any 1 year could be going through some sort of mental health illness. That sort of blows my mind. Mental health is actually equates to 10.8 weeks of absence from the workplace as well. And 50% of managers surveyed believe that nobody is affected on their team. So that to me is a bit of a watch out, because I just wonder, is they don't believe that anybody is infected on their team because nobody has disclosed it, or actually are they not picking up the signs? So that's probably something that we need to sort of try and rectify if we can. So some interesting sort of facts and figures there that sort of really make you think, well, this is really relevant to us now and really relevant to, you know, all of Australians. So we need to make sure it's front of mind for us. Okay, so what do we look for? What are some of the changes in behaviour? Now, these are the changes in behaviour to look out, but these might not be total indicators of mental health, but they could be. So it just gives you a bit of idea. So if you have a team member that started showing a change in behaviour and some of those changes are listed here, then it's worth asking them the question. And it's okay to ask that question. Are you okay? I've noticed you've become a little bit withdrawn. I noticed that you're not your happy, bubbly self. Tell me, are you okay? Now, if you've got someone on your team that's always irritable and always miserable, that might not mean they have a mental health problem, but that's more of a personality trait that they've got. We're talking about changes in behaviour, not somebody who's always miserable. Do you know what I mean? So, and remember, if you have someone having a life crisis, such as death in the family or a relationship breakup, it doesn't mean that they have mental health issues, but they're having a life change, which will change their behaviour for a temporary period of time, and they will still need your support through that. So what we're talking about here is somebody's behaviour is changing for no tangible reason. Then they could be suffering a mental health issue. And if someone has suffered it before, if someone has suffered depression or anxiety or something like that before, then they're more likely to suffer it again, and they will need support. So again, if you've got any questions or thoughts about this, please feel free to write anything in the comments bar, and we'll address it as they come up. So we've got aggression and irritability. So if one of your team members starts showing that, if somebody's showing a reduced productivity or reduced amount of energy, if they're withdrawing socially from the rest of the team or the rest of the people at work, if they're being really quite highly critical and negative, if they seem to be excessively worrying about stuff, if they're decreasing their personal care, it's like somebody who usually, you know, always comes to work looking well groomed and everything, suddenly, you know, if there's a decrease in that personal care. And also use of drugs and alcohol is an indicator as well. So all of these sorts of changes in behaviour where it is out of the norm or out of character, then it could be a mental health issue. So it's something that you can sort of watch out for. I've heard people that are having mental health issues, just they find their coping mechanisms have diminished so much. So somebody who usually can get in front of people and hold a meeting and present and all that sort of stuff, all of a sudden the anxiety is so much they can't even think about that. They can't bear to get out of bed to think about that they have to take that particular meeting because they just can't cope with it. So that's a real change in somebody's behaviour if they've, you know, if they're suffering from a mental illness and it's taken over. So, you know, those are the sorts of things that you need to be aware of and perhaps look for. All right, so now it's really, really important to create a safe environment for your team so they can disclose how they're feeling. Now, why is this important? So there's a number of reasons. It's beneficial for your team members to tell you about their mental health illness because that enables you to provide them with the support and any resources that they may need. So you need to create that safe environment for them to be able to disclose And then a safe environment for that person to return to work that will feel like they're being supported in their recovery. So, for example, like I mentioned before, if someone's suffering highly from anxiety, then you might take them off the public speaking or holding those meetings or making them the centre of attention. You might think about somebody who is struggling with depression. You take them off shift work and put them on days for a while, or reduced hours. Just looking at some ways, and we'll talk about that a bit down the track of what you can do, but some ways that you can support your team member in that particular moment. Now, I think you need to know too that we are all legally required to offer support to a team member who has a mental illness. But that's okay if we know they have a mental illness. The issue is when they don't disclose to us that they have, and then, you know, things happen. Now, some of the things that you can offer as their leader, and it depends on every different workplace, so you have to take these into account, but you can offer time off, you can offer resources, you can offer temporary job change, you might have support people within or outside your organisation that will be able to help, you know, partners, mentoring, all sorts of bits and pieces that you can offer your people to help them and get supported through this. Now, if one of your team members doesn't want to speak to you particularly, then they can go and speak to another leader. Like if you're seeing that there's a change in behaviour and you go up to them and say, hey, Tom, I noticed there's a bit of a change in you in the last couple of weeks. I'm a little bit concerned. Can you help me understand what's going on? Are you okay? And if he says, look, I don't want to talk to you about it, I really don't, then offer them another leader to talk to. Offer you the HR person, offer your safety and wellbeing person, offer an external person, even a peer. As long as they disclose to somebody, then we can offer them the support and resources they need to try and help. Now, just be aware that for any team member, it is really, really difficult to disclose a mental health issue because there is still a lot of stigma around it. So we as leaders really need to make it as safe and supportive as possible. So if somebody comes to you wanting to talk about their mental illness, so for example, if Tom comes up to you, and I'm just picking Tom, I'm plucking that name because I mentioned it before. If Tom comes up to you and says, look, Jane, you know, I'm having some real issues at the moment mentally and I'd really like to sit down and have a chat to you about it, then I want you to treat this as if Tom has just had chemicals thrown in his face. And what I mean is it is immediate. We don't say, oh yeah, but I'm a bit busy at the moment. Can you come back and see me this afternoon? All right, it's immediate. You need to take Tom and you need to go, you know, congratulate him on his honesty and courage and say, come on, let's have a chat, and then go and find a nice quiet area where you can sit and have a chat and let Tom talk and you listen. So I have had leaders that have had somebody come up to them to want to talk about mental health and they've actually put them off. Now, I think that could be for a couple of reasons. Number one, because that leader felt uncomfortable talking about it because they didn't know what to say. And number two, because it's not like a broken leg or someone bleeding or, you know, a piece of foreign object sticking out of somebody's eye, then the sense of urgency didn't seem to be there. So what I'm trying to say to you, if somebody comes to you and is disclosing to you that they are not feeling right, that they're feeling like they're stressed or they have anxiety or depression or whatever it may be, and they're disclosing it to you, then we need to make immediate action with talking to this person. So also, I think now we know some signs to look for. If they haven't approached you, I think it's something that we need to start the conversation with. So if Tom hasn't come to you, you have a right to speak to them first and voice your concerns. So absolutely you have a right. And that conversation could go, Tom, look, thanks for chatting with me today. Listen, I've just noticed in the last couple of weeks you're not your bubbly self. You usually come in and say hello to everyone first thing in the morning and tell us about your night before or whatever. We haven't had that for a couple of weeks. You seem a little bit withdrawn. I'm really concerned. Can you please let me know if you're okay? And then just sit back and listen and try and probe with open questions. A lot of times they'll push back, no, I'm fine, no, I'm fine. If you get the I'm fine, I'll show you some ways to get over that in a minute. So we'll tackle the I'm fine response. All right, let's have a look at how we have that conversation. So you need to make it a really private and comfortable place to talk, preferably not in your office where everyone can see. Let's take them out of the workplace if we can, or take them to a neutral sort of environment where it's comfortable to talk and it's private and nobody's around. And avoid leaving it to the end of the day where you're both really tired. So if they haven't approached you and you want to approach them, try and make it, in the first half of the day. So the next thing is mention the change in behaviour and add something positive. So what you're going to say is, you're usually so happily and bubbly in the mornings, but lately I've noticed you're quite distracted, which is unlike you. So pretty much you're saying that there has been a change. And then encourage that person to talk by using open-ended questions. Try not to offer questions that, just have a yes or no answer, because often that's what will happen. Yes, no. So you can ask questions like, can you tell me about blah? And if the person is reluctant to talk, ask more questions. Don't give up at this stage, right? Because they might need a little prod or probe, but you need to find out, because if this person needs help, then we're legally obliged to offer that help as well as morally. So now, once that person starts talking, we need to listen without interrupting or giving any advice at that stage. Ultimately, we are not counsellors, right? We're not counsellors. We're here to listen. Avoid the temptation to fill in any gaps or silences that might happen. It may just be them having a bit of thinking time. So embrace the silence and let them continue. What you can do then is reflect some of the things that you've heard and say it back, so it shows that you are listening. So you can say, Tom, so what you're saying to me is it's a real struggle in the morning to get out of bed, and you're finding you're having some awful thoughts going through your head. Is that what you're telling me? So you're pretty much showing him that you're really actively listening if that's what he's told you. So now you're going to encourage that person to seek help by asking what they plan to do about it. So Tom, tell me, what have you done so far and what do you need? So you need to encourage them to ask for help and help them decide on what the best steps for them is towards a solution, if that's appropriate. So we can encourage them to look at our internal support systems or our external support systems. We can look at, what do they need? They need to have ownership over what support they need. So you might say to them, tell me what I can do to help you. What help do you need? What support do you need? And if they say, look, I just need a couple of days to get my head straight, then maybe that's what we do. Just encouraging and making sure that we're doing what we can to allow that person to have the time and space they need to help them in that space. And then, of course, we need to follow it up. So follow up by speaking to that person again. It could be a few days later, it could be a week later, but not much longer than that. And tell them on this initial conversation that, you know what, Tom, I'm going to follow up with you. Why don't you take the next 2 days? We'll put it as sick leave. You have a chat to that person that you were talking about. And then when you come back in on Friday, I'd love to catch up with you again and see how you're feeling. So you're having that follow up. And then ask how they are, what stats they managed since you saw them last, so how was that chat that you had that you said you were going to have, and how did that couple of days go with you, and all that sort of stuff. Now, what if you start this conversation and someone says, no, I'm fine. And, you're going to come across that. So they're obviously not fine, right? They've showed all signs that there's been a real change in their behaviour. We need to stay respectful and concerned, so I would probe with more questions, and consider your relationship with them, and consider what verbal and non-verbal cues you're getting. So if they're feeling really agitated and squirming in their seat and no, I'm fine, obviously they're feeling really, really uncomfortable, and you might be onto something. So try and listen, acknowledge, but keep persisting. Mention the observed behaviour that you've seen. If it's getting to the point where they're going, no, I'm over it, I'm not speaking to you about this, then offer another time or even an alternate person that they can speak to. Okay, Tom, you're telling me I'm really concerned about you, because even though you're saying that, I don't think you are. Or you don't want to speak to me, that's okay. who can I get you to speak to? Who do you feel comfortable speaking to? Or, Tom, if you don't want to talk about it now, that's okay, but I'd really love to catch up with you tomorrow and have another chat about this, because I've got some real concerns and I want to help you and I want to be here as a support for you. Okay, so you're offering another time or an alternate person that they can talk to. And, you know, there's other things that you can do too, making sure that you follow up, making sure that you're pointing out what the observations that you've seen, you know, all those sorts of things. But we have to do it in a really respectful and caring, supportive manner. It's no good getting cross if someone's saying, yeah, I'm fine, back off. It's no good going, well, you're not bloody fine, you idiot. Okay, so that's not going to help. We still have to stay respectful. We still have to stay you know, calm and supportive. And so, you know, they know that they have a support person there, because at some point they will come to you and go, I'm not fine. And they might need some help. Now, what you might find too is some people might get angry. So if you're probing with the I'm finers and they get a bit cross about it and they get a bit angry about it, then you might need to step back and go, you know what, Tom? I can see you're getting really emotional about this. I'm not going to push it anymore, but let me tell you, I need to revisit this with you, because I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you. So if you don't want to talk about it now, that's okay. I want to talk. So you're setting up that you are going to talk about it again. You're giving him space now to go off and sort of vent or breathe in and out for a bit or whatever. But ultimately, if they're getting angry, then there is something that is definitely wrong there. Okay, so that's something that we might need to try and manage. Now, I don't know if this has ever happened to you. It has happened to me, and it's terrifying that if somebody comes to you and said they're thinking about self-harm. So just a quick little story from what I have gone through. I was actually facilitating a workshop on site with a load of team leaders. We were just finished. Everybody had sort of left. I was pulling all the butcher's papers off the wall, just about to get on my flight back home. And one of the team leaders came back in and said, can I talk to you, Tina? And I said, yeah, but if you don't mind, I'll keep pulling these posters off, if that's okay, because I've got to leave for my plane in about 15 minutes. So if you don't mind me doing that, is that okay? And he said, yeah, no worries. So I was pulling the posters off, and then he said, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. My daughter's in trouble. My mother's just died. Some other issues had happened, and he said, I just want to kill myself, and then burst into tears. And I thought, oh my God, of course I stopped pulling the posters off the wall. And this is what you have to do when you have somebody that is actually telling you that they're thinking of self-harm. This is what you need to do. Now, we're not counsellors, and we're not equipped to be able to talk them out of it or anything like that. So all you've got to do is you have to stay with them. Stay with them where you are. Call a family member, a friend, a carer, their doctor, anybody that can help them. If you can't find anybody like that, or they don't want you to call anybody to that, then you need to call 000. You can talk to, when you ring 000, they can put you through to a mental health paramedics. And they will talk to you over the phone, and they will even talk to that person on the phone. So then they can sort of judge whether they need to bring someone out straight away, or you might have to take them to the emergency department or get them there at some point. So there is, like, if you call 000 and say, look, I have somebody here that's telling me that they're thinking about self-harm, they will put you on to the mental health paramedics who will talk to you and that person over the phone. Yes, if that all fails, you need to take them to the emergency department, and where they will go through a checklist and determine what they're going to help this person with, because obviously we're not equipped to do that. And what has helped in the past too is some leaders that I know have actually sat down with one of their members and they've called Lifeline with them. So there's Lifeline, there's a suicide callback service that's available online, and that's really a good one because they'll actually call that person back in a couple of days time. And you can say to them while you're there, look, I've got Tom with me, he's just been really, really brave and admitted to me and disclosed to me that he's considering self-harm. We need to speak to somebody, and then just be there with whoever that person is, so that you know that you're supporting them. And there's also, that shouldn't be a gap in there, Men's Line Australia, because I'm going to give you some stats in a minute about suicide stressing. So just some stats. Every day, at least 6 Australians die from suicide. Every day. And a further 30 people will attempt to take their own life in that one day. So it's the leading cause of death for Australians aged between 25 and 44. The leading cause of death is suicide for Australians aged between 25 and 44. And the second leading cause of death for young people aged between 15 and 24. You know, Australians are more likely to die from suicide than skin cancer. But what do we really know about suicide? So, and men are at the greatest risk of suicide, but they're less likely to seek help. So in 2011, for example, 76% of suicides were men. So this Men's Line Australia is specifically designed for the men to be able to pick up the phone and ask for help. There's Lifeline, there's suicide callback service. There's quite a few of them online that you can reach out to and try and get help from. All right, what's some other useful websites and numbers? You've got the blackdoginstitute.org.au. This is something that's really, really good. They've got some great stuff on there that you can look into. They had a really good workshop with me last week that I would recommend if you've got some time. If you're in the workplace, you can call these people up and say, hey, can you come on down and just give us a bit of a rundown? And they would do that for you. There's also mindhealthconnect.org.au that's got some really, really good information in there. Mentherapy.org.au is another one. And there's some numbers. So you've got Lifeline, which is 13, 11, 14. Men's Line Australia and Beyond Blue are some numbers that might be really, really useful for you to just have somewhere in your office, because you never know at what point you're going to need them. If you have somebody you're thinking in your team that may be suffering from some mental health issue, then it's great to get online and have a look at this. They will offer you advice. They will give you some really quick and easy tools that you can download, and also you can ring people up and ask them, what do you do in these particular situations? So they're designed to help, and I would suggest that you reach out if you find yourself in that sort of situation. All right, so just moving on, what I wanted to share with you is some what I call reasonable adjustments. So if you've got somebody in your team that has disclosed to you, look, I've got a mental health issue, I'm really struggling getting out of bed, I'm not focusing right, my energy is really low, I'm getting paranoid because I think everybody hates me, all those sorts of things, then here's some reasonable adjustments that you can do. And I've done it in 4, because there's another slide here, so I've done it in 4 sort of areas. So the first one is work environment, and you have to check that some of these are reasonable adjustments with your safety or HR team, but these are what they can include. So you might find in your work environment somebody who's got quite high anxiety or whatever, just minimising the flicker of fluorescent lamps or something like that could make the world of difference. Change them to a quieter area because they become really sound and light. Allow the use of headphones to protect from loud noise. Or if problems with memory, allow them to take phones to record meetings and take them to training programs or whatever, because when somebody is high in anxiety, the brain is so full with all these sensitivities that they do often have issues with their memory. So being able to reasonably allow them to adjust their day to make it better, I think that they're more than reasonable. If we talk about nature of work, if somebody has got poor concentration because they've just got lack of energy, so take them from long complex tasks to smaller little discrete tasks. So if they have difficulty managing emotions, so a lot of people, they've got a really short wick if they're suffering some sort of mental illness, take them away from the public where they feel like they're under pressure all the time. Try alternate duties and avoid shift work as possible, because sleeping patterns are often interrupted when people are going through a mental illness. So trying to avoid shift work that will, even exacerbate that sort of lack of sleep. And another two areas that I think we can look at is workload and hours. So if you've got the available to do so, or the availability to do so in your workplace, temporary cut back on some of the minor jobs that aren't overly important. Try and have some flexible start and finish times if you can. Reduce the number of days or the total hours worked in a day. So maybe we can cut people's day down a little bit. Maybe if they're struggling to get out of bed in the morning, a really good thing to do is, well, you start at 10 a.m. for the next week and give that person that time to sort of, get themselves organised and feeling good about the day versus trying to peel themselves out of bed. Scheduling in flexi time. So if they've got, support medical appointments or going to see some sort of counsellors or whatever to try and help them, make sure that we allow that in the day for them to attend those. And flexible leave, so giving them sick leave or unpaid leave or something to get through that particular time that they need to get through. And with regards to support and supervision, I think a reasonable adjustment would be offering mentoring. So you might not have a great deal of experience dealing with team members with mental health illness, but you might have a leader in your workplace that has done it before, and maybe you can say, look, Tom, I'd love you to speak to Janet. She is brilliant, and she's offered to be your mentor, and maybe that's something that you can do. Help with establishing checklists and goals. So obviously there's memory lapses and all sorts of things. So if we can establish checklists and make sure they're really bite-sized pieces of goals, then it just takes that less thinking and complexity out of things that will help them get through their day. Sometimes we might need to allow them personal phone calls. So if they've got a support person external to your organisation, maybe they need at some point during the day to speak to that person. I think we need to try and allow that to happen. And I think a general awareness to all of your team about what mental health is in the workplace. Try and remove the stigma that if somebody is not bleeding, they can't be hurt. It's not the case. So it would be really, really great if you could provide some sort of general education to all your members in your team about mental health in the workplace and the importance of the support that we can offer those people. So I'm hoping that has helped today. I know it's been a fairly heavy subject, but I think it's important. I'm going to get you back while I'm talking to you, but I think it's important. There you are. So I think it's really, really important that we address it. I think it's important that we acknowledge that we are not counsellors and we're not trained to talk people out of, doing whatever they're doing, but being able to provide the support and a mentoring or the resources or creating the safe environment that people feel okay to disclose this type of stuff. There's lots and lots of videos on the website. Actually, there was some YouTube ones that the Black Dog Institute had, so have a look on there, online there. They had some videos of people that had suffered from mental health and how they felt in the workplace, and it really gives you an insight of how much struggle these people are going through, and every day they're struggling to cope, and really embarrassed and ashamed to disclose it. So we need to try and take that stigma away and allow that to happen so that we can help and offer the support that these people need. So without further ado, and I know it's been a heavy subject, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts and insights are. Have you got any questions, thoughts that you want to share? Maybe you've dealt with this before. Maybe you have had a mental health illness before. Maybe it's something that resonates with you really, really well. Maybe it's something that you're a bit scared about, and all of those things are okay. But what I would suggest to you is reach out to those websites, because these people know what they're doing and they can support you as a leader if you're supporting somebody else. So it's really fantastic to reach out. So without further ado, have we got any questions or thoughts? I'm just making sure everyone's still online here. Yes. Have we got any questions or thoughts about mental illness, or even the difference between somebody that's suffering mental illness and somebody that's going through a life incident that is creating angst and stress? Two separate things, both need support. But the mental illness is usually a reoccurring thing, and this life incident has the opportunity to lead on to mental health illness, but doesn't necessarily always happen. So they still need your support. This one more of a temporary type situation. This one might be an ongoing sort of help. I remember years ago being told that people should never admit to being depressed. Oh gosh, I know, it's that stigma, isn't it? It's and when we think about 45% of us will suffer some sort of mental illness in our lifetime, it's nearly half of us. So if you look around the room, half of those people in that room will suffer some sort of mental health illness. And we're not talking about feeling stressed because you've had a really crap week, or you've had your grandma's died and you're feeling really sad and a bit out of sorts. We're not talking about that. We're talking about depression. We're talking about anxiety. We're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. We're talking about those mental health issues that really take our coping mechanisms and throw them out the window for extended periods of time. So let's, Flick, I think we know to try and really work together. Yeah. I was suffering post-baby depression at the time. Absolutely, Flick. We need to get it out there. I think as leaders, we need to be able to be the champions to create that safe environment. So if someone is suffering some sort of mental illness for whatever reason, then they feel safe to approach someone and go, I'm in trouble, I'm struggling, and I don't know what to do about it. And then we can offer them the support. We can get them onto these external resources. We can provide them with the time that they may need. That's all right, Flick, I knew what you meant. So I think Flick, you'd be a perfect person that in your workplace, you might be able to offer that mentoring and help, because if that's something that you've gone through before, then you have that empathy and you have some, might have some great advice for people. I think as leaders, we need to reach out and we need to educate ourselves. And I think it'd be a great opportunity that we could educate our teams as well. Remove the stigma. You might find when we start educating our people to say, this is a real thing. This is not a made up thing. This is impacting 45% of our population. 1 in 5 of you in any 1 year will go through some sort of mental health illness. It's the biggest leading cause of death for ages between 25 and 44 today. So it is real. So I think just letting people know how real it is, and just because they don't have an iron rod sticking out of their head or bleeding or a broken leg, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So we need to try and get it out there and make it okay for people to disclose. And I say that because I've had a couple of sites that I work with really closely over the last 3 months that have had 2 suicides. And we knew that they were going through mental health issues, but they didn't disclose to what extent it was. So I think it's really, really important that we put ourselves out there and we give the support where we can. All right. So on that note, not such a happy note, but if we can make the changes, it could be a happier note. If we could actually make the changes in our workplace, so if you as a leader can actually make it a safe environment for people to disclose, make it less of a stigma for people to be able to reach out and get the support they need and create that supportive environment in your workplace, I think that is a good news story. So let's hope that we can get that done. If you've got any questions or thoughts for me, absolutely ask at teamleadertoolkit.com. Feel free to ask me any questions that you've got. But I would encourage you and suggest get onto that Black Dog Institute. That's some really gold information. And I will be sharing this wider and as far as I can. So it might be something that you can do too. All right, that's it for Q&A Thursday. I hope it is something that has resonated with you guys. Feel free, if you've got any questions, put them up there now. If not, I look forward to catching up with you for next week. We've had a couple of questions come through Ask at Team Leader Toolkit, so maybe we'll cover some of those, so that'll be great. Okay, so Leanne, Terry, Flick, thank you very much for collaborating with me today, and I hope that you were able to take something away with you. If you want a copy of these slides with all the information on it, then please feel free to just go to ask@teamleadertoolkit.com and I can send them to you via email. Not a problem. All right, guys. So without further ado, bye Flick, bye Leanne, bye Terry. Speak to you soon. Speak to you next week. All right. Cheers.